With that, I'd like to move on to Björn Stigson, well known, I think, already because of his introduction in the first panel, but he's also, I think, been the responsible person for the Visions 2050. I think it was under your stewardship that we saw that come out, and perhaps, I don't know if you're going to reflect a little bit on that, Björn. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm probably, as far as I've been able to see, one of the few business people here today, and scarce resources need to be recycled. That's probably why you see me now on the second panel. We have heard about an enormous growth in the world going forward. More people, and these new people will primarily be born in the emerging economies. And just one number that I don't think we put on the table today is that by 2050, 85% of the world's population will be living in what we call emerging economies today. 15% is the old world, Western Europe, North America, Japan, and Australia. Now, the focus in these countries, in the emerging economies, is to reduce poverty and improve quality of life. And that is a focus today, and that is a focus will continue. That means there will be a need for economic growth, there will be a need for more resources to be used in these countries. And I don't think we can change that focus in these countries, that they want to improve their lives. We talked about urbanization as well as part of this. Just a number. What the numbers that Naki mentions means that we are going to go from 3 billion people to 6 billion people living in cities in 40 years' time. And then these new infrastructure is going to be built in Africa and in Asia. And if we build those cities like we build cities today, forget about the sustainable world by 2050. It's one of the big issues. Now, the consequence of these very simple trends, more people, higher living standards, and urbanization, is that inevitably we have a world which is resource constrained and pollution constrained. Now, the leading countries and the leading companies have realized that this is the situation, and addressing this has become a strategic priority. There is now a competition, what I call the green race, going on between countries and companies about who are going to be the leading supplier of resource-efficient, low-polluting solutions going forward. I have for 16 years been an advisor to the Chinese government, to the State Council on these matters. And China is taking the lead in this green race. The Chinese view is very clear. We are going to dominate the future world economy that is going to require these solutions. And we are going to transform the Chinese economy to be the leading supplier of these solutions. And they are not the only country. And you see the same thing in leading companies that are putting these issues into their strategic considerations. Now, we as business realize we have a crucial role on these matters. And in 2008, we started a project that Jacqueline mentioned called Vision 2050. We brought together about 30 of our member companies, 30 of the world's biggest companies, to look at what is a business perspective on this future world. And they worked for like 2.5 years. And in 2010, we presented this vision, which they called 9 billion people living well within the limits of the planet. And what they asked the question following that is it possible to see a sustainable world by 2050? And they started to look at the world in a number of aspects, from soft issues like people's values to hard issues like materials. And they said, yes, it is possible to see a sustainable world. Then they started to say, well, if we are here today, what would be the pathway to get to there? What are the transformations, the changes that must happen, the innovations that must take place on that road? And what are the must-haves over the next 10 years if we are going to be on the right track? And they outlined this in detail. But being business, they also said, what are the business opportunities in this? And they concluded that this is the biggest business opportunity that we've ever seen in global business. The amount of investments, the need for innovations, the need of actions by business will, for those that get it, represent the biggest business opportunity of the next decades that we've ever seen. Now, what also we concluded following this was that business and markets cannot do this on their own. Markets are good at many things, but markets are not good at transformational change. Markets are too slow. You can deal with the other types of resource allocations and issues with markets, but markets will not on their own create a sustainable world. You need very strong support of government regulations, and I'm saying that as a business person. And what we did then was that we created another report, which is called Public Policy Options to Scale and Accelerate Business Actions Towards Vision 2050, that we presented in May this year. And this is the first time that the global business community is spelling out what are the type of public policies that we need from governments to incentivize business actions and drive this towards a world which is sustainable. And these policies are not there at this point in time. Now, when I look at the theme of what we're talking about here, then there were a few issues that I would like to end by pointing at. The first is that we need new partnerships. We've talked about it in the other panel, partnerships between what you represent, the science community, academia and business and governments. We need to look at another element that we haven't talked about here today, and that is the time frames. There is a disconnect in how we deal with these issues. You as scientists work with a long time frame. Business also works with a long time frame. We invest 30, 40, 50 years into the future when we build plants. And then we deal with a financial community that is looking at the next quarter at best. And then we deal with a political system that is looking at the 3 or 4 years that they are in office. And this is a major disconnect in looking at long-term investments for sustainability. And we haven't figured out from the from the business side, how do we deal with that disconnect? The last issue I wanted to raise is a question about education in this transformation, and it was mentioned in the earlier panel, but I would like to specifically point at how we educate the business leaders today. If you look at business schools and technical universities, from where we draw the majority of leaders, there you can not really anywhere in the world find a quality education on sustainable development. 2 years ago, I got rather frustrated, so I'm now a visiting professor at the business school. And there is almost no education about the future and what sustainability looks like for the future. It's an education about the past, what has worked and not worked, but not about the future. And we really need to think about how we educate the leaders of the future if we are going to have a sustainable world. Thank you.